ants come marching one by one. Hurrah, hurrah. The ants come in by marching. Fuck, I don't even know the words to that song half the time anyway. But yes, in case you haven't noticed, we are going over Antman. So listen to my 44 tales to astonish by. Ooh, I don't know what I'm doing. Alright, here's the deal for Ant-Man. Marvel is back at it again, obviously. Like, who doesn't know that? The thing is with Ant-Man, it was one of these characters that was probably going to either get an actual movie and be in the Avenger franchise, or, which is what they're doing now, or probably get a Netflix series or some sort of, TV presence. Obviously, he was going to be on it, but the the thing about Ant-Man was that everyone was off put by it because of who was casted, how the story was going to be done, and like how both were going to collide and the chemistry and all that other jazz. The thing is, once Paul Rudd and Michael Douglas was signed on, everyone kind of thought this might be good. It could be one of their better movies. Honestly, it's definitely up there. I'm gonna say this right in the beginning of the review. It's actually one of the better movies that I've seen. And I wouldn't say better, but I was utterly. It was one of those movies where I'm shocked that actually had a chance of actually doing really well. Yes, it's Marvel. Yes, it's superheroes. Yes, it's part of the franchise. Blah blah blah. But if you take that away, a movie on its own, it's actually good. Now the thing is, going back to being Paul Rudd and Michael Douglas. Now you have two Ant-Men here. They brought in they're doing the Hank Pym Scott Lang storyline. Now Hank Pym was the original. If you don't know, he was the original Ant-Man. But in this version, we get a grittier version we get the grittier, the thief version of the Scott Lang of the character. But like I said, it was done very well. To pass the torch on to Scott, it was done in a fair but meaningful way. If you catch my drift on this, I love that we got to put together. Hank was a part of Shield and bringing back them bringing back Carter, Howard Stark, and the other CEOs, as well. But as well but where still there was still no mention of him working on Hank working with Tony on Ultron, because if you're a comic viewer, if you're a comic book fan, because on the comic book side, he did well. He did his science he did his science and helped out Tony Stark with Ultron. And which ultimately turned out to be towards the storyline that they're trying to go for, which is the Infinity War, Secret Wars franchise line. Basically splitting up the Avengers, the East Coast West Avengers, blah blah blah. They're gonna die. They're gonna kill each other. That's where they're going. Now, Ultron was a blip on that radar to start that chain reaction, that domino effect. There was nothing that put them together, because they did the Scott Lang version of this. They did bring it. They did go through Hank being obviously part of Shield, and portraying that he has a history of violence by knocking out one of the CEOs. They basically they wove it in enough where you're okay. He was the original Ant-Man, but now it is time for Scott to take over. Now here's where it gets a little more fun. Not to mention, in the comic, it is Janet, Hank's wife, who wields the Wasp name and suit. But since she's dead, and again, they did go back into Hank's past where she was the Wasp. She didn't really know the name. There was no name really per se, but there was an underlining of where she was his partner. Now remember, in this movie, she's dead. Yeah, now remember, it's still Disney. Kidding, but it's also Marvel's fault too. So no one is really safe here. But, and spoiler alert here, I give you a moment to decide, to decide to stay. It gives her a moment to decide to stay with her daughter, will, with a love interest for each other. But in the comic side, she she hopes that I really hope what they do here is they give her, in what they do in the comic book, which is give her the Red Queen aspect of her character, the villain. Now, so I can't wait to see how that plays out, how they're going to do certain things. Now, again, going back to the cast here, Evangeline Lilly, who plays the Wasp, not necessarily yet, but eventually, she was really good in this role. You had Darren Cross's character in here, who was played by Corey Stoll. You have Bobby Cannavale, Anthony Mackie, who makes an appearance. Spoiler alert. Yes. You also had Judy Greer. You also had Michael Pena, who absolutely killed it. I loved his comedic timing. Baskin-Robbins always finds out was my favorite line in the movie. You also had T.I. for a weird part of it because he was a tech guy, whatever. And then you have Haley Atwell, and then I had John Slater coming back as Howard Stark. The cameos and the Easter eggs, they just keep on rolling. The fact of the matter is, Ant-Man will actually legitimately probably will surprise you. Because Ant-Man is one of those movies, just like if you go back to my Guardians review, Guardians was one of these movies, was one of those movies where if you can get anyone to believe it, and to believe it in this franchise, and to believe that you can have a set of characters like that, you're pretty much golden. And Marvel did it. They proved everyone wrong. Ant-Man does the same, somewhat of the same thing. It proves that they can take really any character or from the comic books and just put it on screen and make it look like it was the greatest thing of all time. Ant-Man, it has one of my favorite powers, the shrinking and talking to animals, kind of like a Doctor Dolittle aspect. Is probably where it came from. Um, the it's not just that, the story links up very well. So there I have now if you when you go see this movie, there are two, count them, two extra credit scenes. One will link up to Civil War, and the other is basically bringing in him into the Avengers, or at least trying to. So it's but technically both do that. But look, you'll see it when you see it. I'm telling you right now, I definitely recommend this movie, especially if you've been following the franchise as long as I have. Especially if you're a comic book fan, obviously you'll enjoy this. Look, it had a lot of great aspects. I didn't see so many flaws. Stan Lee is in it, obviously, so look out for that one. Although I think he's like towards the very end, so it's kind of bogus that you didn't see him earlier on. But whatever. I digress. Check this out. You should also check out my channel. It is down below. You can select subscribe to it. Do that for me. You know what to do. Give it a little like below. Also, stay tuned for our next adventure because we're going a little 8-bit crazy. We're going back to the 80s, ladies and gentlemen, because it is time for Adam Sandler's Pixels. So stay tuned for that. Bye!